Welcome, nerds, to That Just Happened. This is the sister show to the news show. This is when we get to interact with the things in pop culture and nerd culture and whatnot and so forth, and then we talk about them here on the show. So this week, the things that were interacted with, obviously Mandalorian. We have 2 episodes to talk about. We also have, I went and saw Renfield. Miss Maisel is airing now. We also have another episode of Succession. I think that's about it. So let's hit the intro and do the thing. Okay, so again, just a kind of better explanation than what we do in the front of the video. So when the news is happening, when we're covering things in the news, once a movie comes out and we see the opening box office, or once an album comes out, we basically stop talking about it unless there's like a new video for a song on the album, or comic book is out, and then it's like, okay, now go read it. And then that's kind of where it gets dropped. By and large, there are such things as reviewers, and I've kind of dabbled in that previously, but being a one-man show, that a proper review and like getting into the details of how things are broken down and all of the serious and technical aspects of all the stuff takes a lot of time, and I don't have a whole lot of that these days, so we just talk about our experience with the thing. Did we enjoy the thing? And this also doesn't need to be a timely issue, because if it came out 6 months ago and finally are getting around to talking about it or watching it or do whatever, then that's appropriate here as well. So likewise for you, I mean, it's a little bit different because it's a video, so it only goes one direction, but there is a comment section, so you can take advantage of that. So, that being said, that is the proper explanation for the things. Now, the things themselves. So, first up is obviously The Mandalorian, because why would we not talk about that first? Mandalorian, when last we spoke, there was still episodes 7 and 8 yet to air. And at this point, both episodes 7 and 8 have aired, and I have digested the 2 of them. I have watched them at the very least. And this is such a roller coaster of a season, because there's definitely 2 or 3 episodes that didn't need to happen at all. This could have been a 5-episode season and been just as impactful, potentially even more impactful, because there wouldn't have been so many detours along the way. But wow, so the end of episode 7, are we just not going to acknowledge that Paz Vizsla is gone? Like, because that was the oh, and by the way, spoilers if you haven't seen 7 and or 8, so my apologies. Oh, sorry about that. But yeah, so spoiler alert for the things that we're going to be talking about. But so at the end of episode 7, we lose Paz Vizsla, and it's like it's never referenced in episode 8. We see a proper baptism for his son, which is really cool, but like, is no one even gonna talk about the fact that one of the coolest characters in this show just up and is gone, is no longer there, was taken out by the Praetorian Guard? Like, what the hell? And also, the Praetorian Guard are kind of more badass than I remember them being previously, so that was a thing. And just, but the big payoff for this season obviously was episode 8, and all of the GOOO action that happened. A lot of people called this one out. We kind of anticipated it here as well, because that's kind of The Mandalorian. The title of the show initially we thought was just a reference to Din Djarin, because at first we didn't know his name. He was the man with no name in space. Then, as of, once we figured out the purpose of season 1 and we met Grogu before we knew Grogu's name, it kind of started to change a little bit. And then definitely when we met Bo-Katan Kryze, that started to really change. And then in season 3, it's like, all right, so what is The Mandalorian a reference to? Is it just the experience of being a Mandalorian, which then theoretically could be any one of these characters, could continue the story should we lose Pedro Pascal, like the rumors are suggesting? Or Is it becoming the Mandalorian, which then would imply that we're focusing on Grogu and we're watching his evolution into becoming a Mandalorian Jedi effectively, which I think is probably, of those two options, probably the much more dynamic and interesting option to evolve and go through a number of seasons in this series. Or is it still just the man with no name in space, even though technically now he has a name, so that would be a little bit confusing as far as that kind of convention goes. But still, I would argue that one would be more of a compelling story to tell than the, oh, just anyone can be the Mandalorian focus of the series. That, if you go that direction, I think it's going to die really quick. But then also the end of episode 8 kind of sets up almost another option where now it could potentially even evolve into a procedural. We get the bounty of the week effectively. I don't think that is going to be the way they're going to take this, but they definitely left the door open for that, because Din is going to be taking more bounties now that he has a ward, now that he has an apprentice who he needs to teach the ways of the Mandalorian. So yeah, that's a possibility. Again, I don't think that's going to be it, but I do not regret being as hype about this season as I was through most of it. I do wish that episode 3 and episode 6 had gone very different directions, or not existed, you know, whatever. But as far as like what we got in the bigger picture, it was worth the wait. I'm not going to say it was as good as, say, season 2 or even season 1, because season 1 probably is some of the best stuff that they've given us. But still, I think it belongs in the story of The Mandalorian. So without kind of bird walking or meandering anymore, that's basically what we've got there. Let's go to, let's talk about Renfield next, because this one will be quick too. Renfield was not a spectacular movie. It was a fun movie. It was a whole hell of a lot of fun. Nicolas Cage as Dracula is exactly what you want Nicolas Cage as Dracula to be. Nicholas Hoult as Renfield is fine, is good. I fairly like Nicholas Hoult. I don't think he's one of the greatest actors of a generation, but he's not a terrible actor by any stretch. But just the general, like, I think Jeremy Jahns said it the best, is the general writing direction felt very disconnected from itself, because it kind of feels like there are two different movies here. We have the Renfield toxic relationship situation with Dracula, and then we have whatever the hell that was that happened with Awkwafina, and the two kind of seem forced together. It just feels, it feels not great. I can understand why it's been an underwhelming opening for this movie, though I still think it's worth a watch. Maybe wait for streaming. Don't necessarily see this one in the theaters, but it's still worth a watch once it hits streaming. So there's that. Next on the list for That Just Happened. Oh, Miss Maisel. Oh, Miss Maisel. Marvelous Miss Maisel has finally come out, and we have 4 episodes at this point. 1, 2, maybe it was just 3. Either way, I can't remember, because they're legitimately decent length and like very engrossing, so they kind of bleed together. So I might have 4 hours of season 5 in, or I might only have 3 hours, and it's just, they're kind of a blur, because I watched all of them. I watched episode 1 and then kind of sat on it for a day and then watched the subsequent episodes from there. And then they're going to be a weekly release from that. So, because they launched with the first 3 episodes. So actually, no, it has been 3 episodes. I know, I'm irrelevant. You don't care. Has been 3 episodes. Episode 4, I think, comes out tonight as I'm filming this. So either way, oh my God, this show does not disappoint. A little interesting change up though with the style of storytelling, in that we now have these flash forward situations. It's not a flashback. We see Maisel in the 80s, and I believe one of them was even set in the 90s, and we see her kids all grown up, and how her career has really messed with her kids. which is a very strange, like, if you have a social narrative, you have a constructed social narrative that you're trying to push on your audience, which is not a bad thing. Basically, all art does this, so it's fine. I'm not arguing with the fact that there is a narrative, that there is a point of view that they're trying to push. That's fine, but I feel like try and keep that point of view consistent, because basically, the subtext of most of the Miss Maisel series has been she's a very powerful, well, very strong. I wouldn't say powerful, but strong. She's a very strong, independent woman who very literally is taking care of not just her 2 children now that she's single. She left her cheating husband. She's also taking care of her grossly inept parents. Albeit very intelligent parents, but they very obviously cannot take care of themselves without a good amount of money coming in and also people to pamper them. And she's the one that provides those things to varying degrees throughout the course of this series. So yes, that has been largely the narrative, is very much like a girl power kind of thing in the 50s and 60s. But then we fast forward to see her children grown up and how dysfunctional her children have become and how much they have rejected her as a mother in different ways, depending on which child you're speaking of. But still, like, detrimental to their development as children. And then we kind of see that with them as children in this season as well, with her son and the whole sleeping situation. So it's like you had a direction. You were going this way. You were telling this story. You were saying how she can be this wonderful, amazing person all at once and still be a great mother, or adequate mother. I don't know, great again is the accurate word for anything that Maisel does, except for her comedy. But yeah, just. It's a little, and this is super nitpicky. Like, I know we're spending a lot of time on this, but definitely very, very nitpicky of me to be picking out this one thing. And otherwise, a very well done show in very literally every conceivable way. The cinematography, the writing, the acting, all of them, 5 stars. Like, you could teach a class on this stuff. Amy Sherman Palladino definitely knows what she's doing behind a camera and in a writer's room. Words. So it's a little nitpicky, but it just seems a little jarring because first 4 seasons were done in a very specific tone and a very specific style, and we're kind of breaking that for the final season. Seems weird. Either way, you need to watch this. There is no reason to not watch this. Even if you don't have Amazon Prime, you know somebody who does, and you can borrow a password. Not that I necessarily condone breaking Amazon's, rules or whatever, but do what you gotta do because this show's worth it. And then our final piece in That Just Happened, we're talking about Succession, episode 4. The fallout, again, spoilers, the fallout from the death of Logan Roy, and like Ryan Reynolds said very recently of the actor who plays Tom, who is now in the Deadpool 3 movie. I can't think of his name right now. And Anthony something McFadden, maybe, has said that he is a little starstruck with Anthony McFadden on screen, or on set rather, because somebody who can be both hero and villain and victim kind of all at once, which he very much is as the character of Tom in Succession, is very, like, that is an incredible skill. Like, you hate Tom. Like, you've never really liked this character for the entire life of this series. There have been moments where it's like, do I actually feel bad for Tom right now? What the hell's going on? But those don't last very long because he's a dunce, and he's also very shady, and he's also underhanded, and so that takes an incredible amount of skill. And they're really pulling it off. And not to focus on him, because obviously the Roy children are all doing exceptionally well. Still, my favorite, Kieran Culkin in this series, is like if he had to, he doesn't have to, but if he did have to, he could totally just carry the rest of the show to the end of this season on his shoulders alone, because Kieran Culkin is a very underrated actor. I think potentially one of the better actors of this generation. And I say that a lot, but I gravitate towards those kind of talents when I'm watching things. So yeah, Succession episode 4, wow. I'm really bummed that both Succession and Maisel are coming to an end, but it seems like they're both going to go out on a very, very strong note, and I'm here for it. What I'm going to pass this off to you. What did you nerds interact with this week? Let's have that conversation down low. Going forward, no real plans. I do have a concert on Friday, going to see Cursive, I believe, one of the lady friends' very favoriteest bands from college. And otherwise, we've got shows to watch. No real movie plans this week necessarily, though maybe Evil Dead. I'm not going to hold myself to that necessarily, but we might be talking Evil Dead Rise next week. All of that, I appreciate you nerds. Let's have the conversation. What did you happen to interact with this week? Let's talk about it. Let's find me on the socials at Generally Nerdy on basically everything, and we'll see you next time. Before we go though, always remember that if it's generally nerdy, it's probably here, and that just happened.